Greetings. So, I had an interesting conversation with a gentleman from the UK the other day, Baron David of the House of Ward. And upon further due diligence, although we know what exists because of our amount of due diligence and research, now you have to have the supporting evidence to prove it. Well, here in the United States, ladies and gentlemen, there's this thing called credit.net, all right? And credit.net is a site that shows you everything logistically about what you perceive to be local government actually being privatized business. And it's the verifiable proof that you need. Now, I haven't done the free trial. I haven't paid for this website yet, but I was just playing around with it because the knowledge is so vast of the facts that can't be denied any longer. That all forms of government are not actually government. They're masquerading as government and are, in fact, without question, privatized companies and corporations that have enslaved you through contract, deceptive processes. So this is called credit.net. And one of the things that I found interesting, I typed in Custer County, Broken Bow, Nebraska. And I just wanted to see how many of these government agencies would be listed on this site. And to my astonishing belief, every alleged government entity that operates in Custer County, Nebraska is actually a private corporation with its own line of credit, credit.net. So we look at the Custer County Garden Center. That's not part of government, by the way, or alleged government. It's just a business. But here's the next one. Custer County Law Library, Custer County Treasurer, Custer County Weed Authority, Custer County Veterans Services, Custer County Sheriff's Department. Again, showing you that these are privatized corporations with their own line of credit. Custer County Repair Shop, which is not alleged to be government affiliated. Custer County Register of Deeds, alleged to be government, but is really a private corporation. Here's where it gets interesting. Custer County Judge, 604 Heritage Drive, Broken Bow, Nebraska, 68822. What do you guys think of that? The Custer County Judge has their own private line of credit as a corporation. Remember, Custer County Judge is a DBA, doing business as. It's private, for-profit corporation with a credit line. Credit.net, showing you everything that they're capable of doing. There's more pages here. I can go on for days with this. Oh, I don't know what happened there. But there's more pages to this. Now it's going to ask me, if I want to go any further, I've got to pay. But it's just unbelievable. So we now turn our attention back to David Ward and what he has done with a group of highly articulate individuals is prove unanimously across the board that all alleged governments are in fact corporations. And combined with the intel that I'm bringing to you about credit.net, and there are other things that I could show you for days on end, literally, that prove all these people are in fact just doing business as private corporations, masquerading as government, a body of politic that supposedly is for we the people. But one thing that I have learned about corporations since I started my journey not so long ago, and the vast amount of research that I've done, is a corporation is a constructive concept for which men and women in a group somehow find it viably plausible to leave morality at the door. and it's a problem. A corporation basically gives people a persona to wear to do immoral acts against their fellow man. And I can't stress to you the devastation that these corporations, and it's not the corporation's fault. Remember, the corporation is just a mask. It's a personam for people to do illegal, illicit, immoral things to other men and women, their fellow brothers and sisters. And when you work for a corporation, you'll find that most people say, well, I'm just doing my job. Well, if your job is immoral, unconscionable, violates men and women's unalienable rights, trespasses against them, and causes them harm, damage, injury, or loss, just because you operate behind a veil, a mask, a personam known as a corporation, does not mean you're immune from the wrongs that you have done. And waking up the public, the people, to the truth about how to find positive enforcement to correct the system. I've said it 1,000 times. We are the law. Contract creates the law. Equity follows the law. The United States, and furthermore, the United States of America, is lawless, absolutely lawless, until you create the law. Now, if you're going to use the alleged government's forms, without any doubt, if you're illiterate, as most of us are, you will consent to a contract without full disclosure and without ever comprehending the language that is being used against you to put spells upon you, to deceive you, into giving jurisdiction and power of attorney away. It's so powerful. So what Baron David, the House of Ward, has done is create these documents from years of research, studying concept, reverse engineering the social engineering and structure that we find ourselves to be in, around, or subdued by because of our ignorance. And so when we get into this, he's talking about the malfeasance. He's talking about the fraud. He's talking about the actors, quote unquote, that are men and women doing harm, damage, injury to their fellow man, all while placating and hiding behind the mask of a corporation masquerading around as government. His documentation destroys any plausible deniability that they are not, in fact, a corporation, and a corporation alone. They are not government, ladies and gentlemen. So what does this mean for our families? What does this mean for our friends? What does this mean for the banking industry, which has overcome insurmountable odds through the master of deception? This system I now call the beast system. It truly is a satanic beast system. And remember, I keep telling people, you can never get good from bad. If it started out bad, it's bad from the beginning. I don't care how much good it creates throughout the world. You can never manifest anything good from something bad, period. But yet, the alleged government will tell you day in and day out, never waste an opportunity to capitalize on a tragedy. That's the mindset these people have. Always capitalize on a tragedy. So 9/11, they capitalized by taking more of your rights away, and not really taking them away, but subverting from your unalienable rights to implementing something under the guise of safety. You remember, I believe it was Thomas Jefferson that said it best, when you shall sacrifice liberty for safety, you shall have neither, ladies and gentlemen, neither. So when we're looking at this, and he's speaking about the actors, and he's speaking about the fraud and the malfeasance in every last office, all right? They're all 100% accountable for what they're doing. Every last one of them. So, when dealing with alleged public officials, you want their oath of office, you want their EIN number, you want their DBA, you want all the IRS forms that they have filed to be complete, true, and accurate to the best of their ability. If they don't provide them, you want to be able to contact the IRS and say these people are trying to force me into doing business with them through an all caps nom de guerre, name of war. I'm first in time, first in line. That is my property. Let one agent and agency stand up and say that that doesn't belong to me. You will never find one that will put his money or her money where their mouth is. Nobody is going to make a claim to that estate, ever. But you haven't either. And you don't really need to lay a claim to your estate. As Mr. Ward, or the House of Ward, Baron David, has exhibited, his crest, his seal, he created. It doesn't have to be registered at the USPTO because he is above the USPTO. Remember, if we take anything from this lesson, government wouldn't exist if it wasn't for men. Men created government, and when I say men, I'm talking plural, men and women, created government to serve their needs, not to imprison them, not to steal from them. But yet with years of no oversight by we the people, years and years and years of tyrannical behavior with the deception of language, the manipulation of words, the news media, and a plethora of other platforms that have overcome our ability and capacity to see it for what it really is. David Copperfield has nothing on the governments of the world. The greatest illusion ever cast upon men came from Babylon, and we are to come up out of her, ladies and gentlemen. And the way that we come up out of her is by gaining this superior knowledge and asking questions. The way that David had constructed this is so brilliant. I'm still not done reading it, but I'm so excited about it that I have to continue to speak about it because I think every last one of you guys should be able to view this. I've worked day and night trying to text it to people, email it to people, share it on Facebook with people. There are other great people that have joined the spreading of information. Matthew Pritter, another great guy. I fell asleep. I woke up. Matthew Pritter literally responded to everybody that wanted it. He had it, and he made sure they got it. Thank you, Matthew. What a blessing you are. We work as a team. We work together for one goal: harmony, peace, tranquility. And we can achieve that in the 21st century with the technology that we have at our fingertips. You see, in 2013, somebody from the intelligence agencies communicated with the Pope and said, look, the gig's up. With the invention of the internet, it won't be but 10 to 15, maybe 20 years before the people of the world see what they have succumbed to and realize what this system truly is. Forced slavery, involuntary servitude, thrust upon the people of the world through deception, lies, very cunning and stunning the way that they designed it. And so in 2013, you see the Pope come out with a palpable, and he dissolves all corporations throughout the world. Why? To wash his hands of the liability so the Vatican, Italy, Rome could wash their hands of the devastating things they had created clear back in 1302. You see, the agencies, the intelligence agencies throughout the world, whether directly or indirectly, all work for the Vatican at the end of the day. The Vatican was the one to create the first trust that was bestowed upon man, made by man. Again, the first trust ever created was created by the divine, the heavenly Father, giving we men, which is plural, men and women, dominion over the earth as caretakers, as trustees, to ensure that it continued to be a great sustainable source of life for the future. Man comes along and perverts the intent of the divine creator to benefit themselves and step in as demigods. We have these structures set up, these personams known as corporations, where men leave their morality at the door and say they're just doing their job. I can't tell you how many police officers I've encountered when I ask them simple questions. They go, I don't know, Derek. I'm just doing my job. I'm just following my order. I got a boss. I'm just doing my job. So corporations give men the ability to shirk their duty to one another, to love one another, to protect one another, to create this utopia. And instead, for frivolous fiat, would violate your rights in an instant, never thinking twice about it because morally they've lost their compass and they've got plausible deniability saying, I got a mortgage to pay. I got kids to feed. I got to keep this job. They have sold their soul to a satanic system. We go further into David's work, and I'm going to have David on with me. He's agreed to do a show. I don't know if I was on with him for 6 hours or not. It sure felt like it. Boy, what a blessing. So much fun to speak with a man who, over a period of 10 years, has completely awakened. Once was a welder, an engineer, worked in computer softwares, and then when they took interest in him, he took interest in them. And they didn't like the fire that they lit under Baron Dave's bum. I'm most certain they are very sorrowsome that they ever woke the sleeping giant known as Baron David, House of Ward. So when we go through these documents, and we're looking at some things here, it says in here, which is a case at court tribunal undertaken by recognized due process, it is clear that the case that David Ward did not challenge the PCN or the Traffic Management Act of 2004, Section 82, but was challenged was the presumption of the consent of the governed. You see, these people have absolutely no control over you whatsoever, absent of consent. All right? People are volunteering to go to prison. When I first heard that on my way to jail one time, they said, you volunteered to go to jail. And I'm like, yeah, trust me, this is where I want to be. Hotel ironclad bars. That's where I want to be. I didn't volunteer to be here. I was put here. And only through a great amount of due diligence did I realize I walked myself right through the damn gate. Holy moly, they were right. But I couldn't see it because of my indoctrination. I couldn't see it because of the mainstream media. Through all my life, 8 a.m., 7 a.m., 6 a.m., the news media was the first thing that was ever on in my house. The most destructive thing to your family household is watching the news media that is run by maybe 5 people that own your entire media throughout the world. And an interesting case in the U.S. Supreme Court came about not too long ago, where it was said that the news media was bringing falsehoods. They weren't actually producing the news. And the man was pissed about it and decided to sue them for bringing forth lies, deception, through deceptive practices, which he believed was altering society. At the end of the Supreme Court case, the conclusion came in, and I was bewildered because I was certain that this man was going to win this case. And what the Supreme Court ruled, and the conclusion that followed, was that news media is in fact a source of entertainment. They are not obligated in any way, shape, or form to bring you factual information, and they are under no obligation at any time to verify what they're bringing forward into your homes. In essence, the news medias throughout the world can tell you whatever they want and absolutely not be held liable for your ignorance and your inability to go research the plethora of horse crap they force down your throat. The material evidence of the facts, it has been confirmed by the RT Honorable Lord Chief Justice Sir Jack Beatson, FBA. Remember, this is over in the UK, but this paperwork applies unanimously across the board throughout the world. On and for the record that whilst there is no material and physical evidence to the fact that the government or the governed have given their consent, then the office of the judiciary has no greater authority than the local managers of McDonald's. Ladies and gentlemen, he did not understate that at all. The members of the judiciaries have no more authority than the managers at McDonald's. As the office of the judiciary is a sub-office of a legal embodiment by an act of registration and registration alone, where this act of registration creates nothing of physical, material, substance, and is also fraud by default. Any objection to this observation of fact should be taken up with the RT Honorable Lord Chief Justice Sir Jack Beatson, FBA. Now, I want to remind you where the London Crown is, or what is there, the Bala Bala Bala, the London Crown, the London Guild. They have studied law and perfected their charades for over 800 years. If you want to go to one of the most prestigious law schools in the world, you go over to London. You go over to the London Crown and you study under the London Guild. That's where they've perfected this mastery in witchcraft. So think about how powerful this document is, because nobody could contest it. Nobody could rebut it. Furthermore, there wasn't anybody silly enough to put their money where their mouth was. He was with the best of the best in a land that has monopolized the Bar Association and law, quote unquote. Where the RT Honorable Lord Chief Justice Sir Jack Beatson, FBA, would then have to present the material and physical evidence that the governed have given their consent. They allege that we have a democracy. Ladies and gentlemen, this document destroys the ideology of democracy. Why? Because you would have to have 51% of the populace in any one nation to even presumably conceive that you have a democracy. And what this man requested was to produce the wet ink signatures on a contract where they had mutual ascensions of the mind to be involved in the very conceptual idea of democracy. As the office of the judiciary is nothing more than a private, commercial, and fundamental enterprise built upon fraud and criminal intent. I don't know about you, but if you call me a fraud, you're getting a letter back from me. I'm going to respond. If you're telling me that I have criminal intent, I'm going to respond to you. We're going to have words, per se. I need you to verify and prove your claim. Baron David Ward, House of Ward, never received such a letter. So by tacit agreement and acquiescence, admission, which I remind you again, the study of law for over 800 years has been conducted over there. One of the most prestigious law schools in the world is in fact there. And yet not one article of paper was sent to him by way of mail, by private process server, to combat the factual claim that everybody is involved in fraud and criminal intent within the judiciary. Not one, ladies and gentlemen. This is by no stretch of the imagination a valid government by the people, for the people, as it is by default a private company providing a judicial service for profit and gain, but where there is also and always a conflict of interest. What do lawyers feed off of? Remember, if there's no controversy, there's no standing before a court, is there? There is no case without controversy. What do lawyers train for 7 years? To learn how to bicker like little kids. To learn how to argue like you mastered back in the day, arguing with your sister and pissing off your mother. You know what I mean? That's what they go to school for, to learn how to create controversy, because, ladies and gentlemen, there is nothing more profitable than controversy. Nothing more profitable than confusion, which leads to mass manipulation. And that is the cesspool of the system by design that we have today. Where there is a conflict of interest between the needs of the people and the state, which is a company. I can show you their DUNS numbers. I can show you their credit.net reports. They're companies. Policy which has no obligation to the people or even the needs and well-being company staff. This has been confirmed by Shadran Kukaths of London School of Economics and State Office, titled The Department of Government. See Exhibit C, the material evidence of facts. From Exhibit D, it is quite clear that there is due process for the execution of legal and commercial documents. Where these processes are not followed, then the very presence of a document which does not comply with these processes, then the document itself is physical and material evidence of malfeasance in a public office and fraud. I was so elated when Baron David House of Ward got in contact with me the other night. I hadn't slept for almost 18 hours, and we pushed through another 4, 5, 6 hour conversation where we had an articulate, brilliant, sound conversation. And then he bestowed this document on me, and I was tickled pink. I was so tickled, I didn't go to sleep until almost noon today, so I could get this information out to you. This documentation is so powerful, ladies and gentlemen. It shows you exactly how to free yourself from a totalitarian corporation that has usurped power from you without your consent. Form Exhibit F. The facts are the facts. There is no money. The facts are the facts. A great number of people live their lives in a world of make-believe. Let us consider this. 2 barristers or lawyers will and do enter into the courtroom, and one of them will lose. For some reason which is beyond our comprehension, it is a professionally accepted practice to have a 50% failure rate. In what other industry is it an acceptable practice to have a 50% failure rate? If you got a plumber that's got a 50% failure rate, you got a major problem. If you got any business that has a 50% failure rate, we've got a travesty. In a world of reality, there is some people who service the planes at local airports between flights. If these people had a 50% failure, then 50% of the planes would fall out of the sky. How many of you would be willing to put your family on a plane if they had a 50-50 chance of coming home? Huh? That is a fact. There is no money, just the illusion of money. There is legal tender and physical currency and commercial instruments and promissory banknotes, but there is no money. It is quite clear that a lot of people live in a world of make-believe and Alice in Wonderland, Lar Land. There is no money. It is not possible to pay for anything without money. You never paid for anything and you never got paid. That is a fact. And ladies and gentlemen, that is a fact that was never rebutted. Like I said, this man set over 600 precedents in one court case. One court case, ladies and gentlemen. This is the fire they lit underneath his ass when they decided to try and take him and feed him to the beast system to capitalize off him. There is no valid legal or lawful government on this land. See Exhibit H, the hypocrisy of the secret ballot elective process. Again, unrebutted, stands true in fact and law. Not one agent and agency, not one government throughout the entire world chose to step forward and show in any form or facet that they were legitimate. Not one. From Exhibit G, my rights end where my rights begin. Your rights end where my rights begin. Rights are not granted by government or the crown, and they cannot be taken away or violated by government or the crown, and I will add emphasis on this because it's not here, or any corporation furthermore. A judge does not have the right to trespass on my property, so the judge cannot give a bailiff or a civil enforcement officer or a policeman the right by means of a warrant or an order because the judge, who is a company servant by default, does not have that authority unless I agree. Ladies and gentlemen, I tell you all the time about the capiases, the false warrants. I tell you all the time about the insidious behavior of these people running around as many little demigods, trying to control your life. A public servant is a servant default with the statutes or the status of servant, and a servant has no authority above the one who grants that authority. What is Baron David pointing out here? Men instituted and created the concept of government for the betterment of mankind. They are our servants. They have volunteered to be subservient to us, right? But we know they're corporations. We know that they have an oath of office, but they're not particularly operating underneath or standing upon that oath. So they work for a corporation. And when we study the law, we learn that any alleged government that operates as a corporation is subject to suit, not only in their professional capacity, but also in their personal capacity. Until the judge can present the agreement or the consent, he's talking about an international contract with wet ink signature, where he sat down at the table and agreed to be part of their concept, agreed to be part of their constructed industry, their corporation of the governed. Until the judge can present the agreement or consent of the governed, then the judge has no authority to grant a warrant or a court order. But they do it all the time, ladies and gentlemen. What are they doing it under? Color of law. Because again, contract creates the law and equity follows the law. All right? Exhibit Case Authority, WI-05257F, David Ward versus Warrington Borough Council, 30th day of May, 2013. Also Exhibit C, the material evidence of facts. These are the facts. The material evidence of these facts has been provided. What I love about how Baron David constructed this is he lays it out point by point by point. And he supports it with evidence and facts and evidence time and time and time again that simply cannot be overcome. So you will see these beautiful exhibits with the name of the instrument, formal challenge to the 12 presumptions of law. What are presumptions? Hypothetications, assumptions, right? They're not fact. A presumption is just a theory until proven otherwise, right? Like the theory of relativity, the theory of time, the theory of evolution, the theory of gravity. They're all concepts that are readily accepted by the masses until something can be proven otherwise, right? But just because they're a concept does not mean that they are factual by any sense of the word. So we have to reach deep within ourselves and know who we are, where our power comes from. Definitions of presumption: an idea that is taken to be true on the basis of probability. As a presumption is a presumption on which must be agreed by the parties. What are they doing in court, ladies and gentlemen? When you walk in there with those court documentations and you don't correct them on the egregious misspelling of the name, the nomenclature, the nom de guerre, you're agreeing to it, right? Because if you don't say anything, you waive it. You lose it. It's gone. Your opportunity came and went, and by tacit agreement, you accept it to be true. Then, and equally, if one party challenges the presumption to be true on the basis of probability, then this is all that is recognized to be required to remove the presumption is a formal challenge to that presumption. The presumption then has no standing or merit in fact. Ladies and gentlemen, there are two things that are never tried in law or at law: facts and evidence. They can't be tried. They are what they are. It's undeniable. It's indisputable. The extent to which something is probable, the likelihood or something happening or being the case, by definition, then this is not substantive, as it is only a probability of what may be and therefore has no substance in material fact. None. A state court does not operate according to any true rule of law, but by presumption of law. Therefore, if presumption presented by the private bar guild are not rebutted, they become fact and are therefore said to stand true. There are 12 key presumptions asserted by the private bar guilds, which, if unchallenged, stand true, being public record, number 1. Public service, number 2. Public oath, number 3. Immunity, which where do they get their immunity from, ladies and gentlemen? Well, if they're operating properly, I will extend them my immunity to protect them from any harm, damage, injury, or loss. I will insure them through my exemption accounts. They get their immunity from me, and they only get that and get to exhibit that immunity provided they follow certain criteria, such as do not violate my rights, do not trespass against me, do not cause me harm, do not use ill will to defame me, right? You lose immunity at that point because you only got immunity from me. Just like I exhibit sovereignty because it was blessed upon me by the divine, but I am not completely sovereign because at the end of the day, I will answer to the Creator. He who creates is master. I exhibit sovereignty because he is the true sovereign. But make no mistake about it, when he comes calling you home, you'll soon learn who the sovereign is and that you are subservient to the Creator, as are all these public officials. We are the creator of them. If they exhibit immunity, it's only because we allow it. Summons, custody, court of guardians, guardian ad litems, court of trustees, government as executor beneficiary, which is what they're doing in the banking system through trust. Come in as executor, lets you stand in as surety, and the state alleges that they're the beneficiary. Woot woot, send them to jail. Yeah. Victimless crimes in this country are for nothing other than profitable gain. Agents and agencies, incompetence, and guilt. Those are the 12 key presumptions asserted by the private bar guilds. Not government, ladies and gentlemen. A private member association having a monopoly on what is alleged and presumed to be law. The presumption of public record is that any matter brought before a state court is a matter for the public record when in fact it is presumed by the members of the private bar guild that the matter is a private bar guild business matter. Unless openly rebuked, and I love this word rebuked because you'll find it in the good book. You'll find it in the Bible. I keep telling you guys, go read that Bible. I care not what your religion is. I care not whether or not you're spiritual. Go read that book. You're doing your family and yourself a great disservice by not reading that book. It's the original book of trust. It's the original book of all the laws. And it's an original banking manual. And rejected by stating clearly the matter is to be on the public record. The matter remains a private bar guild matter completely under private bar guild rules. We, the undersigned, formally challenge the presumption of the public record as it is by definition a presumption by definition and has no standing or merit in presentable or material facts. Guess what? Baron David, House of Ward, never got a response. Isn't that amazing? Silence is so powerful, ladies and gentlemen. It might be the most powerful tool you ever have to utilize. The presumption of public service is that all members of the private bar guild who have all sworn a solemn, secret, absolute oath to their guild then act as public agents of the government. What do we notice in the House of Representatives, the legislature, the Senate, your local counties are all run by bar members. Ladies and gentlemen, the board of directors sitting on top of the county may be good people, but they're not learned, ladies and gentlemen. And so when a topic comes up and nobody knows the answer, who do they ask for clarification? None other than a bar member, the district attorney within the county. You guys are going to the damn foxes to guard the hen house and asking them how to keep your chickens and your eggs safe. Meanwhile, they're fleecing all of you. Fleecing all of you. Who have sworn a solemn public oath remain bound by that oath and therefore bound to serve honestly, impartially, and fairly as dictated by their oath. Unless openly challenged and demanded, the presumption stands that the private bar guild member have functioned under their public oath in contradiction to their guild oath. If challenged, such individual must recuse themselves as having a conflict of interest and cannot possibly stand under a public oath. We, the undersigned, formally challenge the presumption of public oath, as it is by definition a presumption, by definition, and has no standing and merit in a presentable or material fact. The presumption of immunity is that key members of the private bar guild in a capacity of public officials acting as judges, prosecutors, and magistrates who have sworn a solemn public oath in good faith, and in good faith, ladies and gentlemen, is equity. When we do something in good faith, it's an equity. That's what I like about the way that David constructed this. A lot of it is equity, sheer equity, and we just can't overcome equity. With the maximums of law and support of equity, what is right and what is wrong, there is no gray area in between. It is black and it is white. There is no menacing or malfeasance or misconstruing it. It's either right innately or it's wrong innately. There is no in between. so done in good faith, are immune from personal claims of injury and liability unless openly challenged and their oath demanded. Why are we asking for their oath on the side of the road? Why are we asking for their oath in the courtroom? Why is there such resilience when we make our demand for their oath? And the Secretary of State and the Attorney General, and nobody knows where it's at. Nobody wants to give it to you. We're not sure how to get it for you. Now you know why they hide that from you so damn well. The presumption stands that the members of the private bar guild, as public trustees acting as judges, prosecutors, and magistrates, are immune from any personal accountability for their actions. We, the undersigned, formally challenge the presumption of immunity, as it is by definition a presumption, by definition, and has no standing or merit in presentable or material fact. Ladies and gentlemen, your Attorney General has an attorney. Your Secretary of State has an attorney that works with him. Your governor has an attorney that works for him. For all intents and purposes, the world has been hijacked by a bunch of lying, looting, pandering, thieving imbeciles that have placated to you that they are so much more superior to you intellectually, it's not even funny. But yet, when you bring up these facts, watch how quiet they become. The presumptions of a summons is that by custom, a summons unrebutted stands, and therefore one who attends court is presumed to accept a position. Defendant, juror, witness, and jurisdiction of the court. Attendance to the court is usually invitation by summons, unless the summons is rejected and returned, with a copy of the rejection filed prior to choosing to visit or attend. Jurisdiction and position as the accused and the existence of guilt stands. We, the undersigned, formally challenge the presumption of summons, as it is by definition a presumption, by definition, and has no standing or merit in presentable or material fact. The presumption of custody is that by custom, a summons or warrant for arrest, unrebutted, stands, and therefore one who attends court is presumed to be a thing and therefore liable to be detained in custody by custodians. Not men and women, custodians. You see how they mask their nefarious activity with different words? The language they use that subconsciously makes it okay in your mind. Custodians may only lawfully hold custody of property and things, not flesh and blood souls possessing beings. Unless this presumption is openly challenged by rejection of summons and or a court or at court, the presumption stands you are a thing and property, which explains your bill of lading, the birth certificate, the Social Security account, right? Things and property are logged and manifested on bills of lading, receipts, and therefore lawfully able to be kept in custody by custodian or custodians. We, the undersigned, formally challenge the presumption of custody, as it is by definition a presumption, by definition, and has no standing or merit in presentable or material fact. The presumption of a court of guardians is the presumption that as you may be listed as a resident, right? We're supposed to come up out of her, ladies and gentlemen. If you're a resident, you are screwed. I'm not a resident. If I'm a resident of anything, I'm a resident of the kingdom of heaven. I'm just waiting to go home, baby. That's all. Of a ward of a local government area and have listed on your passport the letter P. You are a pauper and therefore under the guardian powers of the government and its agents as a court of guardians, unless this presumption is openly challenged to demonstrate you are both a general guardian and general executor of the matter. Trust. Before the court, the presumption stands and you are by default a pauper, right? Pauperous, former pauperous. and lunatic, and therefore must obey the rules of the clerk of the guardians, clerk of magistrate courts. We, the undersigned, formally challenge the presumption of guardians, as it is by definition a presumption by definition and has no standing or merit in presentable or material facts. The presumption of court of trustees is that members of a private bar guild presume you accept the office of trustee as a public servant, a volunteer government employee, and government employee, just by attending a Roman court, as such courts are always for public trustees by the rules of the guild and the Roman system. Unless this presumption is openly challenged to state you are merely visiting by invitation, special appearance, invitation, to clear up the matter, and you are not a government employee or public trustee in this instance, the presumption stands and it is assumed as one of the most significant reasons to claim jurisdiction, simply because you appeared. We, the undersigned, formally challenge the presumption of trustees, as it is by definition a presumption, by definition has no standing or merit in presentable or material fact. The presumption of government acting in two roles as executor and beneficiary is that for the matter at hand, the private bar guild appoints the judge, magistrate in the capacity of executor, while the prosecutor acts in the capacity of beneficiary of the trust for the current matter. If the accused does seek to assert their rights as executor and beneficiary over their body, mind, and soul, they are acting as executor dison tort, or false executor, challenging the rightful judge as executor. Therefore, the judge magistrate assumes the role of true executor and has the right to have you arrested, detained, fined, or forced into psychiatric evaluation. Unless this presumption is openly challenged to demonstrate, you are both the true general guardian and general executor of the matter trust before the court. Questioning and challenging whether the judge or magistrate is seeking to act as executor dison tort, the presumption stands, and you are by default the trustee, therefore must obey the rule of the executor, judge, magistrate, or you are an executor dison tort, and a judge or magistrate of the private bar guild may seek to assistance of bailiffs or sheriffs to arrest their false claim against you. We, the undersigned, formally challenge the presumption of government acting in two roles as executor and beneficiary, as it is by definition a presumption, by definition, and has no standing or merit in presentable or material facts. The presumption of agent and agency is the presumption that under contract law you have expressed and granted authority to the judge and magistrate through the statement of such words as recognize, understand, or comprehend, and therefore agree to be bound to a contract. Therefore, unless all presumptions of agent appointment are rebutted through the use of such formal rejection as I do not recognize you, remember, Adam and Eve knew each other. What does that mean? I know you. I would like to get to know you. Adam and Eve knew each other. It means they were fornicating. They were copulating. They were sexually involved with one another. Intercourse was happening. Recognize is a word of business. I don't recognize you. We ain't doing business, right? If I don't recognize you, that means we have had no prior contact in the past. There is no contract. To remove all implied or expressed appointment of the judge, prosecutor, or clerks as agents, the presumption stands and you agree to be contractually bound to perform at the discretion of the judge or magistrate. We, the undersigned, formally challenge the presumption of agent and agency, as it is by definition a presumption, by definition, and has no standing or merit in presentable or material facts. The presumption of incompetence, this ought to be good, is the presumption that you are at least ignorant of the law, therefore incompetent to present yourself and argue properly. Therefore, the judge magistrate as executor has the right to have you arrested, detained, fined, or forced into psychiatric evaluation, unless this presumption is openly challenged to the fact that you know your position as executor and beneficiary and actively rebuke and object to any contrary presumptions. Then it stands by the time of pleading that you are incompetent. Then the judge or magistrate can do what they need to keep you obedient. We, the undersigned, formally challenge the presumption of incompetence, as it is by definition a presumption, by definition, and has no standing or merit in presentable or material fact. The presumption of guilt is the presumption that, as it is presumed to be a private business meeting of the bar guild, you are guilty whether you plead guilty, do not plead, or plead not guilty. Therefore, unless you either have previously prepared an affidavit of truth and motion to dismiss with extreme prejudice onto the public record, or call a demurrer, and a demurrer, another spiritual thing found in the Bible. All right, go look it up. Demurrer, it's spiritual. When the presumption is you are guilty, and the private bar guild can hold you until a bond is prepared to guarantee the amount the guild wants to profit from you. We, the undersigned, formally challenge the presumption of guilt, as it is by definition a presumption. By definition has no standing or merit in presentable or material fact. We formally challenge all presumptions of law, and as we have formally challenged all the 12 presumptions of law, then the presumption of law formally has no substance in material fact. As a scholar of law and recognized RBA, recognized by our achievement, paralegal by the demonstrated knowledge at court tribunal, see enclosed case authority Exhibit B, David Ward and Warrington Borough Council 30, day of May 2013, case number WI-05257F. We will recognize the rule of law when and only when there is the material evidence of that assumed role of law has some material evidence of substance in presentable material fact. Until then, the search for the rule of law that has some credibility in material fact continues. It is done without ill will or vexation, for and on behalf of the principal legal embodiment by the title of Mr. David Ward, for and on behalf of the Attorney General of the House of Ward, for and on behalf of Baron David, House of Ward. And he has his own seal, which is superior to their seal. And a seal is a sigil, ladies and gentlemen. A sigil carries power, right? If you know how to enforce it. So anyway, I'll stop now because I'm going to continue reading this. I haven't gotten through it all. I'm going to read this 6-7 times. It is so powerful, ladies and gentlemen. So powerful. Customize it. Make it your own. Create your own seal and sigil. All right? You notice he doesn't reference codes and statutes, provisions, city ordinances within this document. We're dealing strictly in equity, the common language and lingo that any man perceivably could understand, right? Although a presumption, I believe 100% of you on here right now, alleged 35, just understood completely without question everything I just said. No statutes, no codes, no provisions, just facts that he's challenging, presumed facts, only that prove the contrary, that they're just presumptions and assumptions. They're a theory, a concept. The only way you can find a man guilty is if he's guilty of the mind. You must be guilty of the mind in order to be guilty. But they're stealing from you because of your lack of knowledge of this, what they have constructed around the world to encompass and enslave the world for the benefit of a few. You want to talk about communists on a maximum level? There are only a few that benefit from this, and they allege that you're sharing the wealth, and you are. They're just not sharing it back with you. So thank you for joining me. I'm gonna go have a cigarette because that was damn good. So I'm gonna go have a smoke, and look forward and stay tuned because Baron David, House of Ward, will be joining me sometime in the near future on a show, live streamed. Again, you can see this was done back in January 2015. He started much earlier than this and perfected what he was doing. If you want a copy of this, put your email down below. I'll send it over to you. No problem. I'll stay up day and night to send this stuff to people. Thank you guys for all the contributions, your moral support, your financial support, all the things that you have done to help me continue down this path to bring you facts and evidence to help you destroy this system called the beast, alleged government. So, leave a comment down below and I'll make sure you have this document. There are many that already have it. If I can't get to you quick enough, somebody else may bless it upon you. Godspeed, ladies and gentlemen. Remember, you are the Alpha, the Omega. You are the power. You have the power to contract. You have the power not to contract. You have the power to decimate. You have the power to destroy. Be mindful of your actions and govern yourself accordingly. Thank you for joining me this evening.